Hey guys, in this video, we're going to be running through how to set up the add to cart flow in Klaviyo. Now, there's a couple things to run through here. And the first thing is just making sure you differentiate the difference between the add to cart flow and the abandoned checkout flow. Now, we call it something a little bit different, but Klaviyo will call it the abandoned cart flow, even when it's the checkout started as the trigger. So checkout started means people hit the checkout, they got to basically the place where they start entering all their information. Add to cart is just when they click that add to cart button and they're directed to that cart page. So one thing that's really important to differentiate just before we get kicked off, but let me dive in. I'll share my screen here. All right, so the first thing to know is that differentiation between checkout started and added to cart. The event triggers are different and you're gonna have different flows for each one of them. Now, the next piece is you actually need to set up a custom add to cart event snippet and add that snippet to Shopify. We also need to make sure we actually have the customer's email address at some point in their journey in order to send them an email. If we don't have that, this isn't gonna fire. Now, the checkout started a little bit different. Now, the main purpose of this email is, and the flow, I should say, is to remind people and to handle their objections here, right? People have added to cart, they haven't initiated checkout yet, so they've shown some degree of interest. And typically we want to limit this to about 2 to 3 emails. If you're going to add in some sort of incentive, you can increase this up to 3 or 4 emails. But again, what we want to make sure is we're not over bombarding people. Again, it's a little bit softer. It's a little bit more than a browse abandonment flow, but it's not quite as high intent as someone who has initiated their checkout and they're like ready to go. They've almost entered their credit card. Maybe they did, they just didn't click go. So what do you need here? First thing, like I said, you need to create the add to cart code snippet. And then the second piece is adding that snippet to your website and then obviously testing that too to make sure it actually works. So before we kind of start making this, the first thing to understand is effectively like making sure your on-site tracking is enabled. There's another video that we went through to enable this, and this should be enabled if you're looking to track a number of other metrics as well, but make sure that's on. The second piece is actually creating this added to cart event. So the snippet is like this, and we'll give you access to this snippet as well. But effectively, this is like the core snippet that you need to do. Now, in addition to this, what you need to do is you need to also add this kind of parentheses before and then this after. So what it should look like, something like this, right? So you have if, and then the percentage product percentage, and then your snippet is here, and then the same thing here. Now, how do we actually go about installing that snippet? So effectively what you need to do is you need to go into Shopify, go into your online store, go to themes, select your theme, and then click customize and edit code. And I'll show you how to do that. Effectively, you go in right here, you go to the main website. So actually, let me just navigate back here. So you go into your online store, themes, you then go here and click on edit code. And then what you need to do is you need to find your theme liquid, right? So theme.liquid, and it might be up top. It should be up top typically. So you can select that here. And then what you want to do is scroll down to the very bottom. Now, once you're at the bottom, let's go back here. So once you're at the bottom, you need to paste this into your theme liquid. So paste this snippet into the very bottom before the closing body tag, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, there we go. So copy that. I'm then going to go back and paste that into the theme liquid here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a little bit of space because we're going to add that other piece that I mentioned before. So we add that in. And one thing actually, before I even do that, just keep track of the line that you're entering. It just makes it a little bit easier because sometimes if you're not encoding, this can look like mumbo jumbo. So right now I'm entering this into 160. So I'm going to enter that in. Cool. And then the other thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and grab this guy. We need to add that 4. So again, back up to 160. So we'll add that in at 159 and then back here. And then we'll add that into the very bottom. Oops. Add that into the very bottom here. Now you can delete some of this unnecessary space. There we go. Go back up here. Just confirm. Okay, cool. Yeah, that looks good. Then what you need to do, go back. So once that's added in, after all the other code, just before the closing body tag, right? So again, double check that. Are we before the closing body tag? Yes, we are before the closing body tag. So once you've done this, you need to go ahead and click save. That will then update the store. And then what you need to do, go back here, and now you need to test it. So go to your homepage, add the following to the end of your URL. So basically just replace this testing email with your email. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to the website homepage, and then I'm going to add my email, click enter, right? You want to refresh that page. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to a product. You're going to add that product to your cart. And then what you want to do is see if that actually triggered properly. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. One, you can just log in and search for the email address you just entered, or you can just check under metrics. So this is really important. Whenever you're testing or you're trying to use a new event or a new trigger, just make sure it actually works, right? So the thing you got to do here, you can either go under added to cart, right? So this is under the metrics section. You can go in here and boom. So you see, all right, we got that firing. Right? And that just fired today. You can also look at the activity feed. Activity feed, again, you'll see my email in here and you'll see it just fired 1 minute ago. So boom, we got the add to cart snippet working. Now, in the case that this does not work for you, there's two other options. This should work for the vast majority of Shopify stores. Option one is if your if your store uses a button ID to define the add to cart button. And option two is if your store uses a class notation to define the add to cart button. So how can you tell? Easy, open up a product page, right click on the add to cart button, and I'll show you how to do this. Go in here, you right click on the add to cart button. You're gonna pop up with this, click inspect. I'll show you how to do it. There we go. Click inspect there. So it'll show up with the button here, heading back here. And then what you want to do is basically just look and see like what that says. So this one, obviously it worked without needing to follow these next two steps. So in this example, the add to cart button doesn't have a button ID. This is when the initial code is going to work for you. But if it had something like, ID equals button ID name instead, you'd want to use the snippet below. So this would be option one. This would be a button ID snippet. And effectively what you need to change here is just the ID name, right? So this field right here, that variable might need to change based on basically the button ID that you're using on your site. So if the button ID, for example, said add to basket on your site when you went up here and you inspected, if it said add to basket, you need to replace this with add to basket instead. Now you can check the button ID using the same process as above, and below is an example from Klaviyo, just to kind of show you exactly how that'll kind of show up, right? Most of our clients, the first step works for. So the second option is a class notation. Now it's the same process to inspect this. Another example of how it might show up in Klaviyo, this is from them specifically. This is how a class notation would show up on your website. Now, you then need to copy this code and replace the get elements name by class with the respective name. For example, the class listed in the screenshot above is button product form, cart submit, button product second accent. So you'd want to replace this piece right here with that. Now I've highlighted that in red just so you know how to replace, or you know that that's what you want to replace there. So that's kind of the technical process of the add to cart trigger and setting that up. And that's the hardest part here, right? That's the thing that you want to make sure you have set up. And it's super, super, super important that you do have it set up. Now, the next piece is actually just looking at what this looks like. So what does this actually look like? Effectively, what we want to do is we're going to have a couple of different flow filters. First flow filter we're going to have is checkout started 0 times, placed order 0 times, and has not been in the flow for the last 30 days. The trigger is going to be added to cart. Got to wait for an hour. Again, this is an optional field here. Add profile tag, exclude from campaigns. We're going to send them a reminder. That's the first email. It's just a friendly reminder. We're then going to wait a day, so a 1-day delay. We're then going to show them some USPs, some objection handling, and then a review email. So this is again going to be like, think about where people are at in the funnel. People who have added to cart, they know what they want, like to a certain point, right? They're like, yeah, you know what? I want this. Added it to their cart. They just need to understand a little bit more. So where are they at in their customer journey? They need to know a little bit more about maybe the product, maybe about your brand. Maybe they need to trust you more, aka reviews, that type of thing. We'll then wait a day. And again, it depends on how aggressive you want to be with this. Oftentimes for our clients, we're just going to end this here. If we want to be really aggressive with the add to cart flow, we can then split this out and say, you know what, if someone hasn't purchased before, let's send them an incentive. Let's wait another day. And then let's send some incentive urgency essentially, and then wait 2 days. And then we're effectively removing them from that flow. Now, again, it kind of depends on how aggressive you want to be with this flow specifically. But looking at this, like you can have up to 4. Typically we'll have 2, maybe 3. So that's essentially the flow and the template and the design that you can use. Okay, so how do you actually build this out in Klaviyo? So effectively, the easiest way to do this is go to the flow library, search for add to cart. So you can say cart. Now, the thing you want to be careful about here is again, keep in mind the naming convention, right? This is the one we want to use. So this is an added to cart trigger. So we click on this. We then want to name this, again, follow the naming convention. So like call it abandoned cart, and then we'll call it EM. And then any tags you want to add, the trigger is already set up here. So you can see this is what it's going to pull in. And this is actually working now. So we'll go in, we'll create the flow, wait for this to load for us. And then what we'll do, just double check here, the flow filters are okay. right? And you can always like use that template. So you can always use this template and just be like, okay, checkout started, placed order, has not been in the flow for 30 days. Let's check this. Now, the other piece you're going to want to add in here, like I mentioned here, is just has not been in the flow for the last 30 days. Now, beyond that, diving in here and looking at the actual design of the email. So big thing here is you just want to make sure you're using the dynamic code, the actual design. We've got other videos on that run through exact design specifications and like how to design great emails and that type of thing. But a big thing, and just like one big note to make about the add to cart, we want to send people back to their cart, and we want to show them effectively, like we want to show them their recent browsing, right? So we want to show them, hey, what were they looking at? And this again will pre-populate. It'll look like code in here, but if you look at preview and you actually build it out properly, it'll show up properly. And then for the button, you could say, you know, return to cart, right? Or make your purchase. And then what we want that event URL to be is just heading to the cart, going back to their cart. And most Shopify stores you're going to be able to see it's going to be, you know, the Shopify store name / cart. Double check just to make sure yours isn't a rogue one, but that is essentially how you make abandoned cart flow. It's really, really important to differentiate that between other flows that you're making. Hope you got a lot out of this video. And if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to smash that like button if you got a lot out of this, and subscribe to see more videos. Thanks so much.